Hello, this is Team 167, and it's our pleasure today to display the project. And let's get started. So, okay, so yeah, let's refresh the localhost. Yeah, okay. Let's start by going over each of the project specs. Obviously, as you guys can tell, we chose sections insights. And let's start by adding a sections dataset. So here it says a user should be able to add new datasets to your application, allow the user to create their own ID, choose which zip to upload, and provide feedback if this is invalid. And if it's valid, let's no need to refresh. So let's start. We can start by actually adding a easy valid zip, which is peer.zip, which is sections. And obviously you can see that it outputs that it's being added successfully. No refresh. It's showing on the front page. And yeah, if it's invalid, like a dataset ID, we can try that. And obviously it's invalid, and we satisfy the spec, and let's move on. So going on to remove, it says allow user to remove a dataset. After successfully removing, it should not, refresh is not needed. So let's try remove. Remove the one we just added. Remove successfully, no refresh, yeah. And for view, just display the ID of each added dataset. We can start by adding a peer.zip back. Yeah, as you can see, it's displaying really good with the dataset ID on top. So moving on to lastly, the dataset insights. It says for each added dataset, display 3 plots or graphs that provide useful insights into the data they contain. And as you can see here, if we scroll down, we have 3 dataset visualizations. So the 3 insights we choose to do first is class size distribution. It shows how many the number of classes that have this amount of students. And secondly, it's fail rate by department. Obviously, we chose the top 15 to display on our graph. And lastly, it's just department grade trend average over time. So we can start by choosing like Asia. As we can see that in this data set, just from 2007 to 2016. And yeah. And let's move on to user story. For user story 1, here we said obviously add a new sections data set. And there is some specific edge cases here. And as we can see, for example, as I said, this is a valid add. And if we have a duplicate one with the valid zip, it will also not work. Yeah, it will output dataset ID already exists. And lastly is a valid dataset ID with an invalid zip. We can choose campus.zip, which they contain rooms, not sections. And obviously the program will say dataset has no valid sections. It's also a fail to add. So that's how we know we're satisfying the user story 1. And lastly, let's show our integration test real quick. So this is the integration test for user story 1, and we will run all the user story integration tests at the end. And let's move on to user story 2. User story 2 says being able to view all the added datasets, and if server has 0 datasets, the UI clearly indicates that the list is empty. So we show that obviously it's clearly shown with the dataset ID on top, but if we remove, yeah, current datasets, no dataset being added yet. Add one to get started. So this user story is also being satisfied. And here is the corresponding integration test for user story 2. And obviously, we're going to run everything at the end. And user story 4 here, it says UI displays 3 separate charts generated using charting library for each dataset. So let's add back all the valid dataset that we chose. So courses.zip, this also contains sections, so added successfully. And then we add back pure.zip. Yeah, both are added successfully. And as we said here, if we drag this further, we can see them being side by side. But yes, the dataset insights, it's clearly shown, and obviously we can see the trend over time. And here is the corresponding integration test for user story 4. And moving on to the last user story.
Okay, so for our last user story, we're a course analyst. We want to manage data sets when we click remove, it will trigger a backend to remove it, and the data set list will automatically re-render correctly. So let's go back to here. Let's say we don't want this data set, we want to remove 2. We can click remove, and then it has been removed correctly, and this no longer shows up and no longer shows up here. And then we want to show the test, which is in the spec, and I'll just drag this down so you can see it properly. And this is the last user story test for this one, integration test. And now we're going to run all the tests to show to you that they all work. And this is the first, second, third, fourth, and as you can see, all of the tests that we've displayed pass. Onto the server. So the essential core of all of the posts and queries can be found in this function here, the register routes function. The first one, post, basically this just sends the data, and then we have the other functions like delete that remove the data, this data set gets the data set, and the last two here, the query, this one performs the query, and this query slash validate validates the query. And yeah, that's pretty much it for our project. We hope you liked it, and have a nice day.